Welcome, everybody, to the Rounding Association, the podcast. I'm your host, Dane Thompson, checking with you. It is Wednesday morning, I think like 10 o'clock Eastern time. So we are now debuting, like I said, we're back on Spreaker, but at the same time, we're also debuting to our good friends at iHeartRadio. Subscribe to the podcast on our iHeartRadio, and I promise you it will not be a 2-hour podcast. These are, for those who've been familiar with the podcast and the way this has been going for the last couple months, I'm doing these podcasts every 12 to 15 minutes. That way you guys won't be stuck listening to hearing my voice for the next 2 hours. So each of these podcasts will be centered on something different, different topics around the league, things that, that are going on, the hot stories, the hot topics, what is the bolding press around the full 30 teams in the NBA. And so for the first edition of the iHeart version, for those who never subscribed to this podcast, today's show is the old saying, wish upon trading for a superstar. Because the last couple weeks, we've been talking around the league has been all about Kawhi Leonard and the potential situation that's going on in San Antonio. Not the potential, but the potential trade situation in San Antonio. What's going on with Kawhi Leonard? He missed the majority of the season. Only played 9 games. He was hurt all season long, and you didn't know from 1 minute to the next what was going on with Kawhi. There was frustration with the team. He wasn't with the team. He was cleared to by his doctors, and then his people say he wasn't cleared. He wasn't with the team the majority of the season. Greg Popovich said, "Hey, you ask his representatives." His representatives being his dad, his uncle Dennis Robertson, and it's basically led to the frail situation of a superstar player not with his team. And no matter if you're healthy or not, you at least be with your teammates. So I get both sides of it. You had Spurs players, including Tony Parker, saying, I had the similar injury. I came back in X amount of time. But what people fail to realize is that everybody's body reacts to something different. If I have a cold or if I'm sick one day and, my coworker has the same cold and they're sick the same day too, but I can come back in 2 days. That person can come back in a week. It's even though it's the same type of situation, the same type of injury or bug or whatever it is, it hits everybody different. Kawhi wasn't healthy. So, we only can go by what's the word of the player. And in this case, Kawhi Leonard is a top 5 player in this league. He's the franchise player for the San Antonio Spurs, a team that was contending for the Western Conference. No matter what you believe or not, the Spurs are still a contender because of the fact of they're the most well-coached team in the Western Conference. They have one of the best head coaches, and Kawhi fits that system perfectly. And when you're the star player of that team, it's kind of hard, to be away from a team that has a potential chance to make the NBA Finals. Not to say they were going to do it, but they had a potential chance because, anything goes in a 7-game playoff series. And as we learned last year in Game 1, before Kawhi got hurt, the Spurs were dominating the Warriors with almost kind of the same unit they had this year. Sans Jonathan Simmons, add Rudy Gay. You get where I'm going with this. So Kawhi missed the majority of the season. There was now potential for trade talks. We're back in the same boat again, the same boat that Paul George was in last year, a guy with 1 year left on his contract, with a potential supermax sitting out there to be potentially traded, and the team doesn't want to trade him, and now you have a whole bunch of teams ready to jump on the fence for Kawhi Leonard right now. So the latest of the situation is that the Spurs right now are going to offer Kawhi Leonard 5 years at the supermax, which is over $210 million. For those who watch enough basketball know, you don't let superstars go, so of course you're going to empty the clip and empty every piece of ammunition. And even if in this today's in the NBA, it's hard to walk away from money. Not just money. We're talking $70 million for one full season. Now, how is it $70 million for one full season? Because if Kawhi goes anyplace else, you are looking at, $140 million over, I think, 4 years. And then, like I said, Kawhi makes it 5 at 210, so you get what I'm saying. The escalator goes up so much more. It looks a little different from 5 for 140 to 144 to 4 for 144 to 5 at $210 million. So when you put that offer on the table, you're asking the player to walk away from not only just being the franchise player, but at the same time walking away from what it seems to be an insurmountable amount of money. Number 2, if Kawhi Leonard wants to go to play for his hometown Los Angeles Lakers, that's great. But do you know the state tax in California is ridiculously high compared to Texas? So that $70 million becomes even higher because California is one of the highest tax brackets in the country. And so you're looking at Kawhi, let's just say, getting down to $112 million over 4 years, $120 million. That's a $90 million difference to what you could potentially make in Texas compared to what you could potentially make in Los Angeles playing for the Lakers. If you go any other place, if you go to the Knicks, for example, if you go to Miami to play for the Heat, you go any other place, the tax rate is higher, unless you're playing in Florida, which is no state taxes. But if you go to New York, for example, you go to California, for example, I don't know, you think of the multitude of different teams that can chase Kawhi Leonard in tax heavy states, you're going to get hit way more in penalties than anything else. So if you look at the potential trade targets for Kawhi Leonard, the first one comes to mind for me is the Boston Celtics. Now, why would you say the Boston Celtics in this situation? Hear me out. If the Celtics make the NBA Finals, they're tied 2-2 with the Cavs, with Game 5 being tonight. Let's just say this team gets to the Finals with the team they have now. You know how hard it is to put Jason Tatum and or Jaylen Brown back on the bench next season, especially with the way they played, the way Terry Rozier's played, the way Marcus Smart's playing. It's going to be hard to put those guys on the bench, especially with Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward coming back to the lineup next year. Now, the difference between Irving and Hayward is that Hayward is signed long-term. Kyrie Irving can opt out of next year at $17.5 million. Ding, 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 ding. Does this remind you of Isaiah Thomas all over again? All-star point guard gets hurt, misses a lot of time, has an injury over his head. In this case, the point guard misses playoffs. Trade for guy in final year of his contract that can potentially sign a longer term deal that might be a better fit. Celtics still have some guys to resign. You still got to resign Marcus Smart. You got to resign Terry Rozier. You got to resign Jaylen Brown in the future. And you don't want to hamstring your salary, especially with Al Horford making over $30 million a year. So that could be the potential trade target. You trade a point guard that's going to be a free agent next season when you already have two really good point guards on your roster and you add a defensive specialist just in case LeBron James stays in the Eastern Conference. You have another guy who can guard LeBron James. And this time the difference is Kawhi can go one-on-one with LeBron James. It's not leaving Jason Tatum on an island by himself. It's not using Jaylen Brown to guard LeBron James. It's not even using Marcus Morris to guard LeBron James, even though Marcus Morris has done a pretty admirable job. But you can't just, guys like Kawhi Leonard don't stay on trees very often. And the Celtics have an arsenal of picks that you have at your disposal. Hey, Sacramento's number one pick next year, you can give that in the deal for Kyrie Irving for Kawhi Leonard right now. And why did the Spurs say no? Well, the Spurs replaced Tony Parker and Patty Mills with Kyrie Irving. So it's not like it's a drop-off. It's not a guy who's, a 5'10" point guard who can barely guard a chair like Isaiah Thomas could most of last year, who can get buckets. Kyrie Irving is definitely a playmaker who can hit big shots, that has long-range ability, and is one of the most dynamic point guards in the league with a killer mentality. And you put him with LaMarcus Aldridge, you put him with Pau Gasol, you put him with Rudy Gay, and the Spurs are still a contending team. And you also have that wonderful option of the Sacramento number one pick next summer. The Kings are still going to be bad, regardless of who they take in the draft. That's another podcast for another day. Any other place that Kawhi Leonard goes to, it's going to be kind of hard to make it work. I mean, New York, big market. What are you going to give up? You can't give up Porzingis. I mean, you're going to give up the lottery pick this year. What players can the Spurs take back? Frank Ntilikina, Tim Hardaway Jr.? That's really not exactly the sexiest type of trade anywhere. You're looking at Portland can pull you off for him. Maybe you throw back C.J. McCallum in any type of deal. That could be an option. You throw picks in there, maybe a player like Mo Harkless. I know you're not going to give her Evan Turner's contract, but you maybe throw a player or two in a draft pick, but you get back C.J. McCallum. That would be a nice little start because Danny Green is a free agent. There are not too many trade options that make sense for the Spurs. And for Kawhi's people, if it's the Lakers, hey, listen, if he's going to sign with the Lakers, then you call it L.A. for you're going to have to ask for Brandon Ingram in return and a first-round draft pick and maybe another player. So you're not going to get Kyle Kuzma, but maybe you can potentially ask for another player, a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in a sign and trade, maybe a Julius Randle in a sign and trade, something, to get back Brandon Ingram and maybe one of the guards, maybe Josh Hart or somebody, in the pick. That's if he's really intent on signing with the Lakers. Now, the other trade target around the league right now, it's come over the last couple days, and the guy who's been unhappy with his organization, kind of like in Kawhi's situation, is Karl-Anthony Towns out in Minnesota. The difference between Karl-Anthony Towns and Kawhi Leonard is that Karl-Anthony Towns is still under team control, under a rookie contract. This is a league where, that salary caps matter and players matter. So if I'm the Minnesota Timberwolves, knowing that I have an all-star big man who is still under my team control for the next couple of seasons, you're going to find any and every way to make this man happy. But since we're talking trade scenarios, let's go into further detail. Karl-Anthony Towns, is a guy that can command a lot. If you're the Phoenix Suns, yes, you throw the number one overall pick in the deal. I know Luka Doncic, I know DeAndre Ayton are potential superstars in this draft, but the key word is potential. When you have Karl-Anthony Towns already having a relationship with Devin Booker, you make that deal 3 ways from Saturday and twice on Sundays. What can you possibly get back if you're Minnesota in this deal? Yes, you would ask for the number one overall pick. I would ask for T.J. Warren. I would ask for probably one of the other bigs on the team, maybe Allen Williams or somebody else to help solidify your bench. Maybe ask for a point guard. You're not going to get Josh Jackson in the deal, but I think you can get T.J. Warren and you get the number one overall pick and maybe something else, another player or so to make this work. Maybe Marquise Chris, another power forward that's somehow stuck out of rotation, a fish out of water. If Dragon Bender's your guy, you trade Dragon for Dragon Bender. I mean, Phoenix is a team that can open up the options. Atlanta's another option. Listen, the Hawks' accelerated path, they might have to accelerate this rebuilding path pretty quickly, and Karl-Anthony Towns might be that fit. I mean, you can throw the third overall pick in the draft. You can also throw in Torian Prince. You can throw in not Gary Kent Bazemore. The only guy, you can even throw Dennis Schroeder in this deal if you don't believe that Jeff Teague is your guy at point guard. So there's plenty of different ways you can make a trade, with Karl-Anthony Towns at any point in time in this deal. Either of the teams that are in championship contention could try to make a deal for him. I don't see any of them. I don't see Golden State making the deal. I don't see Houston making a deal. I don't see maybe if Minnesota got desperate and they wanted that Cleveland pick, you take Cleveland's pick, you throw back another player, maybe a Tristan Thompson or something. It doesn't make too much logical sense to me either. But there's not too many teams that are championship level that can make the deal except for Boston. But will Boston want to give up Jaylen Brown and put him next to Jimmy Butler when you already have Andrew Wiggins? It's like they have a ton of wings in Boston, and Minnesota already has enough wings with Butler and Wiggins. Wiggins already complaining about being a third option. Can you imagine what happens if they added Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown in the situation? I know Boston fans are wondering, why am I throwing them in any trade scenario? Because Danny Ainge has enough arsenal to make any type of move. So Danny Ainge would rather have, a guy like Anthony Davis down in New Orleans, but that's just never going to happen. So, hey, Karl-Anthony Towns is a great option. You put him next to Al Horford, and Horford can make sure that Towns is focused in defensively. The same way Kevin Garnett was a mentor to him out in Minnesota when he was there at the reigning stage of Kevin's career and the early part of Karl's career. So it'd be a good fit there. But the thing is, Boston's main, what Boston has better than anything else is that they have wings. And unless Kyrie Irving becomes Tom Thibodeau's target, you're not going to get, full value from him. And I don't think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown would fit well with those guys because Tibbs is not an up and down coach. Now, for those complaining about the Timberwolves offense, they had moved up in efficiency last year. The points a game went up, and that's the reason why they made the playoffs this year. It wasn't the defense, and Tibbs especially was defense. The defense was exactly the same as it was ranked the exact same last year. So the last thing is with the NBA draft lottery coming out, and the picks were announced, what team in the lottery could potentially do something to get themselves, into that championship status? Let's take away Philadelphia because they own the Lakers pick at 10, so that's an obvious team that could potentially make a move to try to be a major player or something. But the team I see being a major player is the Dallas Mavericks. Mark Cuban has already drafted Dennis Smith Jr. Dirk is going to be another year older and is going to play one more season. Mark Cuban is going to find some kind of way to try to move this pick for a star player. Whether it be DeMar DeRozan in Toronto, if the Raptors want to trade DeMar DeRozan, if it's DeAndre Jordan, if they can try to do a sign and trade for DeAndre Jordan, if it's for a disgruntled star player that we haven't figured out yet, maybe it's CJ McCallum out in Portland if he's disgruntled. If Bradley Beal and those guys have an issue out in Washington, you throw Bradley Beal in any type of trade offer for that 5th overall pick. I really think that if Mark Cuban is really trying to do something this summer, I think he's going to do it on draft night. I think Minnesota was a team last year that made the Jimmy Butler trade. I think Dallas is the team on draft night this year that will make a move. I don't think they keep this pick. If they keep the pick, they're going to get a guy for the future, but Cuban isn't about the future. This isn't Shark Tank. He's about making moves right now. I think that they'll be the team that's going to make the move in the top 5, maybe top 7, to trade for a star player. I don't see Orlando doing it because the contracts are too bad. I said Phoenix could move on to 1, but it would have to take a superstar. Like I said, Karl-Anthony Towns to do it. Sacramento, I don't know what Sacramento can offer outside of Buddy Yield or De'Aaron Fox to get teams to be interested. I love Bogdanovic, but I don't think they'd be, besides that pick, they don't have another player to go acquire a superstar. And besides, what superstar wants to play in Sacramento anyway? Atlanta's a great city, but they're really focused on rebuilding. That's why they brought Lloyd Pearson. I mentioned him as a chance to chase Karl-Anthony Towns. And besides, they have Dennis Schroeder on the table. They're trying to move anyway. Adios to that contract if it is. 4 is... we're going off the top of the head here. Like I said, Orlando's at 6, not moving. Dallas is at Dallas is not going to is the team I'm targeting. The Knicks don't have enough in their arsenal to make a move, in my opinion, unless somebody's willing to take back Tim Hardaway Jr. because Porzingis is out and they're going to move Kristaps Porzingis. Cleveland, if they're trying to keep LeBron James, they could potentially move that pick and a couple players to maybe acquire another star player. But my target team in this top 7, like I said, is the Dallas Mavericks. And I think the Mavericks, if anybody's going to make a move, will be the one to get a superstar. So, this is Around the Association, the podcast. Check me out on Facebook, which would be at Around the Association on Facebook, aroundassociation.com. The mock draft will be up at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Also, we're talking Game 5 of Cavs and Celtics tonight after the game, so it should be about 11:30 here on Facebook. And like I said, follow the show. Like I said, subscribe to it. It's free. It's free basketball content on a daily basis. And I might see you guys later on today for another podcast. So for Dane Thompson Around the Association, we'll see you guys later. Peace.